All right. So I'm going to just share a little background before Kim gets into the meat of the discussion. If folks could put themselves on mute if they're not talking, that way we can make sure we don't have, there's a lot of people, so I want to make sure we don't have too many distractions. So I'm Mary McLaughlin. Oh, I'm sorry. Did someone say something? No. Okay. I'm Mary McLaughlin. I am the project director for this HRSA Rural Health Network grant, which is a federal grant focused on care coordination. Background is I'm a nurse. I've been hospital-based for decades, worked at NYU, and most of my time was spent at Albany Medical Center in nursing administration, management, bedside nursing, director of care management for many years. I moved to the North Country to work on Medicaid reform through the district program. Did a lot of
No, how do you turn it off? Do it up here.
mute. I gotcha. Okay. Through Medicaid reform through the district program, and was a director for the AHI Health Home. So have a lot of background in care management. So I'm supporting this group. This grant was awarded to CVPH Hospital for the region. So it wasn't just for them. It's administered through the Adirondacks ACO, and then I'm the project director through, and I work for AHI. So it's really a collaborative effort among multiple organizations. The goal of the collaborative was to improve transitions out of the 5 hospitals in the area, which is CVPH, Adirondack Medical Center, Alice Hyde, E-Town, and Glens Falls Hospital, focused on using care coordination for high-risk individuals. We currently built the collaborative. There's 29 partners, and I'll show you a quick list. I'll send these slides out after, and so will Kim's slide be sent out after, so you don't have to worry about, but I wanted you to have contacts for the other organizations. The goal, we've been creating best practice protocols. So pieces of the region do things very, very well, trying to take those pieces and spread them throughout all 6 counties. Through HRSA, we're working to share a risk flag that says this individual should have care management. They're at risk because of chronic conditions, social determinants of health, and hospital utilization. And we're really trying to get frontline care managers such as yourselves access to HRSA. So you can see the snapshot. It's a great tool. HRSA's come a long way over the years, and it's a great tool for seeing diagnoses, hospital utilization, medication lists, lab values, just a myriad of problem lists, information. And this flag will be housed in that snapshot. And then the last piece is to do some care management workforce development, which is what this came from. There was a subgroup that met, and we, this is just the list of the organizations and the people that are involved in the collaborative. And that way, when you get the slides, you'll see that. So the subgroup that worked on workforce issues did a survey of many of you, and many of you may have answered that survey. It was in the fall, and we had a very strong response rate, 138 responses. There's about 250 or so care managers in our region, in that 6-county region. So to have over a 50% response rate is very good. Normally you're happy with a 20-25% response rate. So we were excited about that. And overwhelmingly, these 4 items came out as the priorities for the care managers in our region. So managing burnout, vicarious trauma and self-care strategies, how to best support difficult client or family, and exploring boundaries for care coordination and care delivery. So we're trying this forum as a way for you to see each other and hear from each other about strategies that you have found to be helpful. Kim is going to help facilitate discussions around that to help us all with some specific tools that might support our ability to deal with burnout. But as you're thinking about it, I want you to be thinking about this forum, and is this something that's helpful, and so forth. One of the ways that I think would be helpful that you can kind of coordinate with each other is if you let us know your organization. So you can rename yourself in a Zoom meeting. If you click on the 3 dots next to your name and go to scroll down, you'll see a place that says rename. If you can just add to the end of your name your organization, and that way, if somebody wants to reach out to you in chat, you can talk to just one person if you want to, not the whole group. So we're really hoping that this will be interactive, both you all with Kim through the chat, and then you with each other, if that would be helpful to you. So if you could just take a second to do that, that'd be great. We also will have an evaluation, and we'd like to hear from you. Not only was this effective related to burnout, but is this an effective forum? We plan to have the other 3 topics presented in a similar format, and we'd like to hear from you. What makes sense? What are other topics? Does this work for you? What we're really trying to do is meet the needs of the folks doing the work. So I appreciate you being on today. So the next thing we're going to do is move to the topic of burnout. We have with us today Kim Perone, who is works with the Center for Clarity, Compassion, and Contentment. Kim works with individuals and organizations to help improve skills for dealing with things, especially things like stress reduction, mindfulness, workforce balance, bereavement, resilience, authentic success. Kim is a certified life coach with a master's degree in organizational communication. She's a certified workplace mindfulness facilitator, a certified grief educator, and the author of A Case for Clarity, Compassion, and Contentment, Finding Your Center. Kim really believes that clarity, compassion, and contentment are present. If that's present, then an inspired life is possible. So I'm super excited to have Kim here. She's been just such a pleasure to talk with. She's worked with some of your organizations as well. And I think you'll really enjoy today. And we'd like to make sure we hear from you about that. We'll put this in the chat, and also I'll send an email after, but the evaluation is important in making decisions about what comes next in the other presentations and how we can improve this burnout presentation, burnout management presentation as well. So without further ado, I'd like Kim to come front and center and share with us your words of wisdom. We appreciate you being here, Kim. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much, Mary and Kelly. It's been great working with you to set this up. Happy to see so many of your faces and your names and have you here today. This time is for you. You spend a lot of time working to support others, and this hour and a half is for you. And I hope to give you some tools, tips, techniques, answer your questions. We can even do some live coaching. So after I present about addressing burnout, which I'm going to share my slides right now and get that up on the screen. But do think about questions that you would have that you're willing to share in the chat. If you would like to be more anonymous in the chat or with your question, like later, then all you have to do is maybe send it directly to Mary or to Kelly Owens instead of the chat to everyone. And they will be helping me with the questions and then reading them off. And I hope to facilitate a discussion, and then maybe we might even be able to have people raise their hands if you want to unmute and actually talk at the end when we do the discussion pieces. So do be thinking about how to make the most of this time and questions you might have for me. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. And I even just noticed as we were setting up, I don't know why I didn't notice it before, but NCCCC is N4C, just like Center 4C. So Center 4C is my shorthand for the Center for Clarity, Compassion, and Contentment. And it really isn't a center that you go to. It's a center you find inside of yourself, that sense of groundedness. And in the midst of chaos of life and the busyness and the joys and the tragedies, but basically always being able to tap into essentially you and how you can stay grounded and feeling as okay as you can be despite all circumstances. So I hope to help you find your center here. Addressing burnout and improving well-being, I can honestly tell you, this is my #1 requested presentation. And it's my honor to talk to you about this because you have worked so hard. So if you feel exhausted, if you are, questioning things, it's been a long haul these last couple of years. Who wasn't stressed beforehand? So I do want to say, like, that level of self-compassion, we'll talk about, more in the future, but that level of self-compassion, we are all recovering a bit or trying to prevent burnout right now, all over the place. And that is okay. And our well-being is there for us to tap into. So with that, I'm going to define burnout for you. So burnout is an occupational phenomenon. So defined as a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that is not successfully managed. And as you know, you might be in time periods of that because of the need of your communities and all the people that you serve. So you are doing the best you can, but as individuals, we may be feeling like that stress is now chronic, meaning never going away, right? It's just staying the same. I'm stuck. It's Groundhog Day. I'm not feeling any better and not having breaks. So part of what I'm going to talk about is how you can affect that. We also, what we are dealing with, and we should to truly acknowledge the complexity of our society, is there's this new acronym called VUCA. And VUCA, if you haven't heard about it, is we live in volatile times, and we see it and feel it all the time. And we have access to what's going on in the world as well. And so things feel very volatile, uncertain. The pandemic certainly stretched our ability to deal with uncertainty and our resilience in dealing with uncertainty and just taking care of business and doing the best that we can. Our world is very complex. I noticed this when I'm even trying to operate my television at home. My husband and I, we can barely operate our remote. We're now streaming. There's a Fire Stick. I mean, it's crazy how complicated even things that used to be so simple, like all of our technology tends to add so much to our life, but it does seem pretty complex. And I know paperwork in healthcare is very complex, right? So more and more in society, we aren't getting simpler, we're getting more complex and ambiguous. So things aren't just cut and dry, they're not just black and white. So that squiggle on the right hand side of the screen here is how you may feel sometimes. So just want to tell you that's pretty normal in these VUCA times. So stress costs, okay, are huge to workplaces. So we are at the cusp of a real awakening, more resources for employees and management in the workplace, because the data, and this was pre-pandemic, is 33% of people were experiencing chronic stress. So they were self-reporting that it's like stress that just never goes away, never get ahead kind of thing. The 28% intended, this is 2016 by the way, so intended to change jobs do. So nearly a third intended to change jobs based on stress. 75% of doctors' visits are due to stress, and 5 to 8% of the healthcare costs. This adds up to $30 billion. So this was 2016. Now we add a little impact of COVID here. So some COVID-related work stress. The data showed in 2021, near 90% of adults believe work life is getting worse. So that is a huge, huge number. 84% having chronic stress related. So now the emotions, anxiety, sadness, anger, 76% experiencing burnout. And I'm going to define that in a second. And a third of women downsizing their jobs based on what's going on at home. So we even have like a gender related statistic of not feeling like you can juggle it all, making some changes, and maybe making some changes based on health. So that's really where we are today as of 2021. So stress versus burnout, a little definition here, and why preventing burnout requires your intervention. Stress is like that over engagement, very reactive. There's a hyperactivity, there's a sense of urgency, there's your energy is starting to wane. You might be feeling a little anxious, like I can't keep up, I can't think straight, I can't do this, and it feels physically tolling. When you slide from stress to burnout, now that over engagement and hyperactivity becomes disengagement. You're pushing away from the work, almost can't even bring it. You have distant emotions, blunted numbness, maybe a sense of helplessness. What does it matter anyway? Your motivation starts to tank. You may be feeling extreme sadness or even depression, and the emotional toll far exceeds even the physical toll. Okay, so preventing burnout requires your intervention because you are the one feeling that, and you are seeing if it's now becoming more burnout and where you are. And if you're thinking about where you are now and you're like, don't be afraid if it's negative, because like I said, a lot of people are experiencing this. So one, you're not alone. And two, it is not a permanent state. It doesn't need to be a permanent state, even if there are situations you can't change. So in the coaching tips, we'll talk more about that and arm you with some ways to back from the burnout. So a little bit more, going a little deeper into the symptoms of burnout. Exhaustion, you can't rest away. Like you say you slept for 12 hours, but you still are feeling as exhausted as you were before, then that's kind of an emotional exhaustion, right? So that's not a physical exhaustion. Maybe the cynicism, maybe you weren't even a cynical person, you're starting to become very cynical. Lack of focus, people tend to say, I'm all over the place, I can't think straight, grating irritation, maybe you're popping off at your family members at home because you're just really at the end of your rope after a hard work day. Headaches, gut aches, this is that embodiment of the stress, pulling it physically into our body, overuse of comforts, food and drink, and things that might in the moment make us feel better, but don't in the long run. And that disengagement, again, that pushing away from your work, feeling like you just can't even. So is the short list of ways to improve your well-being, and we'll dig a little bit deeper during our time together, but the ways to improve, some of these are going to sound so normal to you, but maybe I explain it in a way that it's a little bit more poignant during this time of feeling stressed and burnt out. And some might be new concepts. So taking a break, recreating, okay, that, you know that, right? But how we take a break matters. Is it really a break, or are you thinking about your job when you're off? Are you checking your emails? Do you feel tethered 24/7? If you're checking your emails and you're like, that's great, technology is great, I'm having a great time, I'm on vacation, I'm at the lake, like you see this picture here, that's actually my place on the lake, and it's just beautiful and serene. But if it's good that technology helps you, if you're feeling good, this is where you can use how you feel as a guide, or if it makes you feel like you work 24/7, even thinking about your job. Maybe we're just even at home and it's a peaceful evening, but we're churning, we're thinking about work. If that's making you feel not good, if that's making you feel overworked, this is where taking a break, take a real break and let yourself know you can step away. You can step away and the world won't fall apart. Your mind in very stressful times, in high demand work, your brain starts saying, you don't have time to not think about this because you're too busy, but you do need to break take a real break. And then maybe too, you're helping each other do that. In collaborating in a community, someone needs to cover what you do for you to take a real break and not be interrupted. So I want you to look at the breaks and the vacations and the time off that you take, look at it more strategically. Like you need to clear your brain a bit so that you come back to work with the energy of not being burnt out and feeling better about everything that you do. Sleep is another factor. And, honestly, I don't know, but I never hear people go, oh, I slept for 10 hours last night. That feels so good. And actually, the last time I heard someone say that, it was me, because nobody says that, because we have a culture that makes people feel like that would be lazy and that you're not doing enough and you're too busy for that. How the heck could anybody? Oh, someone might say, well, must be nice. You get to sleep 10 hours on a Friday to Saturday. We have a cultural norm that, the less sleep you need, the better. And our body does a lot when we sleep. So it's extremely important to our well-being. And recent years of extra stress give us the feeling that it's okay to not just get up earlier and earlier to cram more in life. Okay, sleep is an activity and it's important and your body needs it. Eating well, that one might be more, more intuitive to you, but it is hard to do in times of stress or if you're burnt out. So just a special note on that is that don't make it a plan that's hard to follow. If you want to eat better, do it like you love yourself, not like, okay, I got 20 COVID pounds that I need to lose. And now I'm going to, make myself more aggravated. And I personally get hangry. I don't know about you, but you want to do it. Do eating well like you love yourself. So make it fit. Take baby steps if you need to. Don't add a whole bunch of stress, diet stress on top or nutrition stress on top of stress. Doing something new. This is very counterintuitive after times of long-term stress in just over-engagement and lots of work, home, at home and at work. Doing something new is probably the last thing you'd think of, but doing something new is really good for your brain. So in some ways, it's like taking a break. And if your brain can immerse in something new, like say you just decided you're going to start doing, well, I personally like Wordle. So I don't like puzzles. My husband does a crossword puzzle all the time. And I'm like, nah, I like to read. I don't like puzzles, but it's short. It gives my brain something to really focus on, meaning it's not focused on all kinds of other thoughts about the world. Someone might do embroidery or crafting. So any of you listening too, if you have a special hobby or craft, you know what happens when you get a chance to do that. Your mind goes so fully into what you're doing, you might even lose track of time. That is flow. And it is very good for your brain. So if you're feeling burnt out or trying to prevent burnout, it's counterintuitive, but do think about a hobby that might give your brain a real break from the norm of just this feeling like you're on a treadmill, just running as fast as you can. So do give that a try. Establishing boundaries. So boundaries. It's difficult. I usually get a lot of questions about this. We serve lots of people in our lives, you all especially. And so how do you really establish boundaries? A lot of times we more often feel like our back's against the wall and we're giving until we have nothing left to give. But you can't give from an empty vessel. So boundaries, a red flag that a boundary is needed is when you are resentful. So that's some quick shorthand for you. When you start to get resentful, that's a little red flag. That's a very negative emotion and it's normal to have, and it can be very justified, but I want you to use that as a little indicator light that there is some level of boundary. Maybe you haven't taken a vacation, maybe you're starting to feel irritated, like, why am I always doing everything at work and home? And you notice, the indicator light is the resentment, and then back up, then be pretty analytical. Well, maybe you didn't take vacation for a longer span of time, because where were you going to go if you were staying home for the pandemic? So there's maybe the boundary is like, I do need to take my time off. There's a lot of work, but maybe I need to work this a little bit better. I'm starting to feel resentful. Asking for help. When I'm in person and doing groups, I'm like, how many people are comfortable asking for help? Raise your hand. Nobody raises their hand because nobody's comfortable asking for help, especially if you're a caregiver. You're accustomed to giving help. So that might be a boundary too. It's like even a boundary with yourself. Like, no, I actually have to ask for help. You are a community of people willing to help each other. So maybe you learn how to do that. Controlling your thoughts. I'm going to go deeper on that. How to control your thoughts, and because this is where we can reduce a lot of stress, stay grounded and centered no matter what's going on around us. It's amazing. There's so much there, so much low-hanging fruit to not drain your energy, right in learning how to control your thoughts. And we'll talk more about that. And then exercise. So one thing that may be new information on the exercise is when we get stressed, we start to have all this body chemistry, and now you're probably familiar with that. But how often are we actually punching the adrenaline out? So it's like we don't complete a stress cycle. We're sitting in it. We're sitting and swirling in all of the chemistry that happens when we get stressed. So we to complete it, maybe using exercise, not to think about it as losing weight or becoming more toned, is like anything that pounds out and completes the stress cycle by getting that energy out of you. So,
Hey, Kim,
yeah.
Kim, before you go on, we just have some comments in the chat that I think maybe you can comment about. So one says, hi, Kim, I think one of the problems with engaging for a while is the stress of knowing you're going to have so much to do when you get back to work. It's hard not to think about that when you're trying to relax. Maybe you could address that before we go too far.
Absolutely. That is part of the thought control, because your brain is wired to have more of a focus on the problem. And then that is the problem. So your brain is saying, no, we need to pay attention to like all this work that's going to pile up. And so we have to actually pull ourselves away from those thoughts, because they're very disempowering and they can waste our off time. And actually this slide is going to address that.
Great. There's another comment about what helps the person. This other person reacted, I think, that knowing there's always going to be something to do tomorrow. So you just have to let it be there. And when you get there, you'll do it. Dave Ramsey has baby steps that helps to start with the easiest tasks and work your way up. Feels more accomplished then. I thought that was good. And another person talking about that, doing your own, doing a new thing. They started a dance class, and it's just been wonderful to be able to focus on nothing else, just on the body and enjoying what they were doing. So it's really good stuff. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you for interjecting that. And that's great. Keep the chats coming. And then, Mary will help me with the questions, but absolutely, like letting your brain, dance is a perfect example. Letting your brain and body focus on something other than work that you have to do is such a great break. And so that's wonderful. It can fill your cup back up. And definitely this slide addresses the others. And I love the productivity hack, right? Is like there are also those productivity tools like, do the quick things quick. And so if you feel like you're someone that needs prioritization on those tasks so that things don't get too overwhelming. The thing about our thoughts, to that first question, thank you very much for that. This slide is like my number one. If you said, Kim, you could only show one slide and we only have time for one slide, 1 10-minute lesson, it would be this. And so what I want to say about how we can reduce our stress is, you see the left-hand side. Okay, our thoughts. We have this chattering in our head all the time. This is our ego, as we call it in coaching. It doesn't mean you're egotistical, but the root of the word is true to, it's our sense of self. I actually need to know where I end and where you begin, right? So we have these egos, which is our part of our thinking brain, our psyche, and it is our problem solver. It wants to keep us safe. It is kind of our safety officer. It is our problem solver. It wants to be useful to us. And it is always assessing the environment for what's needed, what we need to do, how we need to do it. It has a negativity bias because the brain has a negativity bias, because in the history of the world, danger has been more dangerous than good has been good. And so given that, it's that danger could kill you. And our ancestors were good enough to escape danger, right? So you are the descendants of the people who did it the best. And that is our modern problem, is our brains are extremely alert to problems. And we know that problems aren't solved overnight most of the time. And so our brain wants to keep us in that all the time. And good isn't dangerous. So our brain, the expression is that our brain is Velcro for bad, stuck right there to it. And that's why we ruminate. Even if you've woken up in the middle of the night thinking about stuff it was bad. Okay, we stick like Velcro to bad and Teflon for good. We go, oh, that's so wonderful. And it slides right off our minds, or the beautiful things in our life. Don't stick there because of that negativity bias. So even the most positive person has that brain that has evolved that way. So when we know this, what's that other counter to the ego, counter to the brain's negativity bias, is your being. This is the part of you that's you, has always been you. It's the part of you here that is here for the experience, whether it's good or bad. You are here and this is life. And that part of your being is your essence and who you are. We need to engage that to pull the ego away from problems and give us a break. Like when you're off and you know there's work piling up at work, or there's something that's unresolved or problematic, to allow your being to say to your ego, I hear you. Now, you're two selves, right? So it's like you're talking to yourself. It's okay. Debate those thoughts. You're having these thoughts, and you might allow your being to tell your ego, I will have more energy if I take time off to solve that problem when I get back to it. And so a counter thought, a common one for me might be, I wake up in the morning and say, I don't have enough time to do everything that I have to do today. Well, my being counters it and says, I will get everything that I need to get done today. And it's going to shake out that it's going to work. And some things that I think are just going to drain my energy, give back energy, like doing this workshop. So I counter those thoughts and let my being support me with more empowering thoughts than disempowering thoughts, or even empower me by letting me separate from my thoughts for a second, for a minute, for a day, a little bit. We're going to have thoughts all the time, but I want you to see them. I don't want you to be them. So on the right-hand side, that's shorthand. That's how you can remember this. You want to see your thoughts. You are the observer. Your being is having the experience of seeing and hearing those thoughts. But they aren't always true. They don't always serve you, and you can debate them. If you start to feel a sense of fear, or even just a perfect example is things getting worse in the world. And in that, right? Things getting much worse in the world. Well, that's an approach, but we might let our being say, there's a lot of good in the world. There's a lot more good. That good, that Teflon for our brain, not really focusing, it not being as natural to focus on all the good. That's why gratitude's an actual exercise in coaching. If you want to feel better because you feel like crap, and I don't want you to feel that way, do spend some time with all the good in your life. You're going to shift that energy and feel better. So that, as you can imagine, I could go on and on forever with that. But
Kim, before you go on, there was another question that came in.
Sure.
And working with others, we have clients and patients that rely heavily on us at times. So taking a break or vacation is difficult for them. And we've had experience with clients getting mad when we were off without even giving notice. How can I effectively and appropriately communicate to the people I work with at Workingman too?
Internally, a quick shorthand for dealing with like the frustration that you feel of like being sort of attacked by that when someone's frustrated is, you know, maybe just like, I wish you well, I wish myself well, or like, may I be a blessing to you, may you be a blessing to me, just to settle the frustration. Like the ego is going to want to, you know, dukes up, right, with something like that. Or deflated, feel like, oh, I don't, you know, I can't do this because that person's not pleased with me doing that. So in terms of empowering yourself, and also you are, you know, you are all part of a system and a process, and it never ending work, right? I'm sure you all feel like there's just a never ending flow, and we're no good to people if we're really running like machines. We are human beings and not human doings. So things will shake out, and I'm sure there are ways too that you can support each other in the reverse. So there's this flow, steady flow of work. But I do feel like when you harness some of the thinking and you empower yourself to do what you need to do, but do good work in the world, when you start to get control on your thoughts and even not let other people kind of knock you off that if you don't feel like you're pleasing them enough. I think that's where you can kind of do some inner coaching of yourself it is hard. And I know in caregiving professions, there's a lot of guilt. You may be leaving more work for coworkers. And I've heard a lot about that, but in the end result, do the best you can, be most effective. When you take the time off, you end up coming back and being more effective as well. If you need to delay time off, I know that you all know how to do that. Like you've probably done a lot of that. So like there are times that it works, there's times it's not. I want you to get more nuanced in when you can and when you can't. So mindfulness is another way we can control our thoughts. We have this tendency, like the image here, to have all the switches on all the time. So we're thinking about everything in our life all the time. It's like having all the lights on in your house and you start the vacuum and you put something in the microwave. So we kind of know what happens when we do that. We blow a fuse. So mindfulness, and a lot of people think it's like big, overwhelming, something else I need to learn. You know, some of you may be well versed in it. Some might be thinking, oh yeah, that's something I have to do, add it to my to-do list. It's very simple. It's so simple, the brain doesn't like it. Okay. And that's why it might be hard. It's simple, not easy. Mindfulness is observing the present moment non-judgmentally. Now, that's a very simple statement. It's extremely hard to do because that ego I just mentioned to you is always churning and always creating judgments. Is this good? Is this bad? How does this affect me? What do I need to plan in the future? So it's really just being with what you're doing, like the image suggests. That person, the right-hand cloud is just taking in the trees, taking in the sun, walking the dog. Right now, I'll get back to all that left cloud later. And so I do want you to think in terms of turning some switches down to single task when you can. Now, I'm sure you're a master multitasker, but that is very hard on our brains, and it is task switching, which is a little bit of a tongue twister. So take the time when you get the time. Say you were just sitting for a few minutes at your desk or in your car before you go to work, and you took a couple minutes and you listened to the birds or you listened to the sounds around you for just like 2 minutes. That would be a mindful moment. Just fully feeling present and grounded where you are. It might be eating your lunch and maybe you just eat for even if it was just 10 minutes. You're just paying attention to your food. You know, those mindful moments can give our brains a break and immerse in the present moment. And these moments are our lives. So when we're lost in a thought about what happened before and the future, we are never in the present moment. And when you think about how often your mind is in both places, wow, right? It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. So it's like pulling, again, giving yourself permission to sometimes just be in the moment. and not judge it, whether it's good, bad, or what I need to do and how I need to anticipate things going wrong. We also have this tendency to embody our stress. So I want you to just think and become more conscious, and you might already be, being in healthcare, is where do you hold your stress? Is it, is it in your head or your jaw, the pit of your stomach, your shoulders? Are you finding them way up here? Do your feet hurt at the end of the day? Back aches. So thinking about for you where you hold your stress, because ultimately we don't want to let it sink into our body. We don't want it to cause ailments. We do want to express it. We want to be aware. And I think sometimes just being aware of it, when you start to feel that neck ache or that headache, you are realizing, okay, that's stress. And so the awareness itself kind of lets you maybe just breathe for a few minutes, maybe gives you permission to take a break for a couple of minutes, maybe debrief. Here's a good example. Maybe you're debriefing when you go home, you just need like 5 minutes before the rest of your family comes at you with questions and problems and what's for dinner, just to make sure that you're not like all tangled up like this. And I don't know if people want to just, before we go to the next slide too, you could just chat. Like, do you know where you hold your stress? Like, do you know where you hold your stress in your body? If people want to just chat that, is it your shoulders? Is it your back? Are you willing to share that? I'm just looking at the strip. Yeah, like head, neck, shoulders, back. Yeah, all of it, right? We know it goes there. It's in our body. Thank you. Yeah. At that level of awareness is good. So then you go, well, now what? But I mean, you can notice it instead of being unconscious. TMJ, right? Yeah, right in the jaw, shoulders and the jaw and stomach. So it's so good to know that. So those are your indicator lights as well. Maybe that is when giving you permission to pamper yourself a little bit. Take those moments. The ego is saying, oh, we don't have time. We don't have time. I want your being, that essence of you, to challenge your egoic thoughts, to challenge that ego that says, but we don't have time. We don't have time for anything. Well, you know what? You might take time for a walk, or you might take time to stretch. You might, and the whole world won't fall apart. And I know that the brain would be telling you we don't have time, because when we feel very pressed, stress-wise, that is the myth of the ego. You may not have a lot of time, but you have a few moments you can spend on your own self. So thank you for sharing like those places. You're all very aware of where you hold that stress, and I appreciate that. Okay, so the next slide, we're actually going to do a little exercise here, which is going to get you active. Now, you see this image on the screen. These are the big pictures or slices of our life. Okay, now there was a handout that is a similar wheel, similar, not exact, but basically, if you have that sheet, use that sheet. If you don't, you might just take a blank sheet and draw a circle and make some pie slices that you see here. And I want to give you a few moments in this space, because after you're going to be swept back up into life, and I do want you to reflect on it later, but I'm thinking 5 minutes right now. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to just look at this and write down, not go multitasking and doing other things in your life, but I want to give you some writing time right here while we're together virtually. And I want you to rank the sections in 0 to 10. Okay, 0 would be that centerpiece is like, completely bad at the moment, very empty. This slice of my life is just not fulfilling, to a 10, which is very high. And meaning very good, very stable. And so to rank it and maybe write a few notes in that pie piece for yourself. And this is what we do at the beginning of coaching. And when we are stressed and when we are burnt out, or on a good day too, we could be doing this, but taking that step back and looking at the big picture is a great way to get that reflection, connect with the good in our life, look at the problem areas and the things we want to bring up and more objectively. So if everyone kind of understands that, I'm going to give you a few moments to do that. Rank those slices of life, either what you see on the screen with a blank piece of paper, or if you have the worksheet that is the life wheel, as we call it in coaching. Does that sound good? So take a few moments and then I will be back in a moment. So take a few moments for yourself to reflect.
Is 1 not so much a priority and 10 is a priority? Can you just clarify that again?
Certainly. It's more that it's feeling low. So yeah, maybe you haven't made it a priority. It's not that. I would say if it's good, if you feel like it's good because it's a lower priority, but it's good enough for you, then that would be a high score. So it's not whether it's a priority or not. It's more about how fulfilled you are in that slice of pie. 1 would be very unfulfilled, very lacking, and 10 would be very good and very solid. So anyone else can ask any question at any time too. Do a couple more minutes to let people write. If you're done writing, you can just focus on your breath a little bit and like a kind of a quiet moment. So don't let the silence unnerve you. I know it's hard when we live very busy lives, but just to allow yourself to focus on your breath, and you'll have thoughts, let them go by like the cloud if you're done filling it in. And if you are, just keep writing. We got a couple more minutes. Okay, so if you're still writing, don't let me interrupt you, but I'll just kind of come back and open it up for some chats. Like anyone can say, how did it feel to do that exercise? Any comments, any thoughts, any questions, anything that you would like to share? You could do that now as we took that moment to reflect on the big picture of your life. All right. So hopefully you're feeling like this is a starting point. So, okay, my chat screen just came back. Okay, good. Wow, focus to the improvements I have made. Love that. Thank you so much for saying that. That is often what happens when we step back and look at the big picture is it's empowering to us. There's a lot of good in there. It was interesting to introspect on my own goals rather than someone else's. Beautifully said. Thank you. That is, you do spend a lot of time focusing on others, right? As caregivers in personal and work life, puts it into perspective that I need to focus on finding more balance. Yes. Okay. And then that's an indicator too. So if it's low, no, don't feel bad and don't, this is empowering information. And it just gives you an indicator of where you can focus. Amazing to see the ebbs and flows of life. That I would do this tomorrow and have a very different wheel. Okay, so you might, you can actually take that worksheet, make multiple copies, print multiple copies for yourself. You can do this over time. You can do this every 6 months. You could be reflecting, use this as a new tool. In coaching, we use this as a starting point because it's a good conversation starter. Why someone came to coaching, what they'd like to see, they might have that in their mind, but when they reflect, I can talk to them about anything that's 5 or below. And we can start there. Anything that's not satisfied. So I thank you all for your beautiful comments. And anyone actually, you all have my information. So too, anyone can reach out and ask more questions even after this workshop. But and Mary, it helped me be very clear where I should focus some attention. It was also very specific and it made me feel grateful for many things. Yes. So that taking that is it's a nice step and you deserve it. You deserve to be able to see that. We may be having thoughts to my prior conversation about ego versus being, those egoic thoughts. Well, let's just say that we can all relate to the fact that those thoughts are like, I'm not doing anything well. I'm failing at work. I'm failing at home. And we may be having these thoughts. They're not necessarily true because when you step back and you reflect, you're probably doing life great. And if there is a low category, it doesn't mean that you're not. It's just raising it to your level of awareness and maybe being more intentional. So I thank you so much for your comments and for this exercise, and feel free that you can do this anytime, and then you can reach out to me after also if you have any other questions. So self-care, so this moves perfectly into self-care. Right? Self-care could be one of those tackling a low pie piece, even if it's a couple of steps and say it was, balance was off. Self-care is something that is not self-indulgent and it is not selfish. And I want to debunk those myths because we can be very conditioned that it is, that we should always be looking outside of ourselves. We may have even had some role models in our lives, like a mom who just gave and gave and gave and never thought of herself. And so it's not sustainable, to be honest. And so what we see in coaching a lot and what we see in stressful times in life is it starts to cloud. If we start to get exhausted and depleted and feeling like all we do is work at home and at work, then the cloud starts coming in. and the sun is shining above the clouds all the time, but the cloud can come in. So it's not really sustainable. This is actually where burnout happens. And people say, I'm just so burnt out. I must be so burnt out. That's where that exhaustion, you can't rest, comes from. So being intentional and proactive about it, put it on the calendar, think about what you like to do. Know what recharges you. Don't wait for that friend of yours to say, hey, let's go on a hike, and then that recharges you. You might have a great person in your life who's good for doing that, but I want you to know what recharges you. And I don't want you to think that anything is small or something you shouldn't be doing. I have a great example. A friend of mine said, she would just always say, I can't read. And I'm someone that reads a lot, right? So people will say to me, Kim, how do you read so much? I said, probably because I sit on my butt more than you do, because if we are always doing and pushing ourselves to do, you can't read. And a friend of mine said, she had like a light bulb moment. And she said, you know what? I feel like maybe I can't read because when I was growing up, my mother was always saying, stop laying around. There's stuff to do. Keep moving. And this is well-intentioned mom, you know what I mean? Mom wasn't saying anything terrible, but though you get those seeds implanted in you, you get those norms, you get those beliefs that sitting around is lazy, and maybe it recharges you to read. And if I didn't allow myself time to do that, I would feel a lot more stressed than I do, because actually for me, just as an example to share, is like I dive into the words in that book instead of my own thoughts. So it's a nice break from my own thoughts and my own stream of thinking. So I don't want you to think that something's too little, like the little things, the big things, the hikes, the bubble baths, whatever it is for you, maybe just some time in silence, because if you have a lot of people around you all the time, you might just need a few moments of silence. So it's critical for your well-being. And this is the year 2022, the year of well-being. Okay. So this is the other worksheet that you have. And this just is a very simple form of how you're going to do self-care. I'm also going to give you a couple minutes to do this because I don't want it to just get pushed aside after this workshop and not have you have it done. So very simply, self-care planning is something that you're committing to. So this is just a simple self-care plan. How you want to feel matters. Right? So we live in a culture that it's almost like it doesn't matter how you feel. No. It's not even that. It's like, if I feel exhausted and depleted, I'm doing good. If I feel bad, I'm doing good in the world. And that is a dynamic that for well-being, we want to change. We should feel good, even when we're doing hard work and we're doing loving work and we're giving of ourselves. I want you to feel more good than bad. So how you feel matters. So I want you to write the intention on how you want to feel. And then goals, what are short and long-term goals? Well, it might be, the sort of the easier things to incorporate in your schedule, maybe some longer term things. And on the right hand side, so no judgment of yourself at all. Write whatever feels right in those boxes. Like there's no right answer. So just whatever makes sense for you in this worksheet, it is yours. On the right hand side, these are just writing prompts for different areas of your life. Like what does self-care mean professionally? What does it mean physically, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually, or in a relationship? And if any, if you're kind of at a loss in any of those categories, that's okay. Don't judge. You might think of something later, or, just kind of write what self-care means to you in those. And I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that. You may have already started, but I'm going to give you some quiet time. Again, don't let the quiet be in unnerving. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to just feel good about filling in this sheet. Okay, so if you're still writing, don't let my voice interrupt you at all. You keep that train of thought going and you can keep writing. And definitely want you to think about this in the future and think about being more intentional about your self-care, not let that ego stop you. We don't have time. This will never work. I don't have the resources for this self-care. You know, maybe you wrote a spa day and you're like, but I can't afford it. That's okay. Just this is a beginning, not a lot of judgment. Don't let that ego create all kinds of problems. You want to feel good. You want to take care of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, other things tend to fall apart, like becoming burnt out or even wanting to not be in a profession that you loved at one time. So that's what I mean about the sustainability. Overall, when we do good work that we do in life, we will do it much better with much more energy and a lot less effort if we have been taking care of ourselves. Another form of self-care is self-compassion. So I want to speak a little bit about self-compassion. It is wanting to alleviate suffering, to be compassionate, and you are in a field that is based on doing exactly that. You are doing the best you can to alleviate another person's suffering in healthcare. Self-compassion is wanting to alleviate your own suffering. And so I show Brene Brown here, Kristen Neff here. They are two amazing researchers who have written about this. Brene Brown with Dare to Lead, but originally with the Gifts of Imperfection. So now she's really taking it more into the workplace in the beginning. And if you haven't read the Gifts of Imperfection, this is a great book that talks about being vulnerable. And she also has a guide for wholehearted living. So she has a guide of 10 principles that we want to cultivate. Her research said, hey, people who are really doing life well and they feel good, they have these 10 qualities, and then they have to let go of other things to get those qualities. So that's great. Their websites, I've put them here because if self-compassion, if you feel like you're really tough to yourself in your thoughts and in your head and in your actions, then this may resonate for you. Kristen Neff's her website is very generous. Both of them are. Their websites are very generous. There is meditations and exercises around self-compassion. I do that as a whole webinar, and a lot of it is based on Kristen Neff's selfcompassion.org. So there are compassion exercises, and two, with caregivers specifically, you may need to remind yourself in a moment of suffering, you pause, and maybe you just had a really challenging case, really, really painful situation, is that you did not create that situation. You are doing the best you can to be a participant in any kind of healing, or at least being there for that person. So really, to just alleviate your own suffering. I know you see a lot of suffering. So this is a way for you to take care of yourself and acknowledge that. And I want you to, the studies show that we don't actually motivate ourselves as well through a good swift kick and being tough on ourselves. That too is not sustainable. So over time, knowing that self-kindness, being gentle with yourself, talking to yourself the way you would a good friend in the big picture is extremely important. Actually just check the chat here to see. Oh, Glennon Doyle. Yes, good, great. Love Brene. She's amazing. She's amazing. And now she has podcasts too that you can listen to. Love, thank you for the comments. Dare to Lead, yes. I just went and grabbed it. Yeah, Dare to Lead. Hey, I do that with books too, even though I'm an avid reader. It's like you get it and then you just put it on the shelf and it sits there until the exact right time for you, right? So that's great. Thank you all for participating in the chat too. And then we will have some time. So I'm going to hurry up with these last slides because we'll be able to really open it up. And I think you'll be able to chat, maybe even verbally by unmuting yourself, and we'll get to a little bit more discussion. So this is just the summary, right? I want you to take time off. That's real time off. in a way that you figured out works best and with your fellow colleagues, and mentally, being able to, your brain will maybe go back there, but keep pulling it back, reflecting on life, like that life wheel, do reflect on that. It shows you the good things. It shows you the lower areas, but that's okay. That's just a beginning place. It's just showing you that maybe that is the energy you'll get from if you maybe pull that slice of life up a little bit. Practice mindfulness. It's very simple, not easy, getting your mind to not be all over the place, but that will help prevent burnout or recover from burnout. Develop that self-care plan, keep thinking about what it is and how to be proactive. We've been in a time where we've had to reschedule a lot, and when you're caring for a lot of people, you might be planning something for your self-care, and when you have to reschedule, your brain starts saying, why do we plan anything? Because we always have to cancel and reschedule. So you have to overcome those thoughts too, because you still want to be as proactive as you can be. And do show yourself compassion. Self-kindness is key. And don't forget to breathe. We hold our breath. It gets very shallow when we're stressed. But if you're familiar with the autonomic nervous system, when we get very stressed and with that shallow breath, we might get too stimulated and we'd be in fight or flight. And then that's like all the chemistry ready to run away from danger, which is really not our problem. Our current modern problem is that that's not the kind of danger. And we don't need to have all that stimulated in our bodies. To stay in rest and digest, we are solving mental problems a lot in today's society. So you want to be in your high level brain, not your primal brain ready to run away. And so by staying in a calmer place, the breathing helps you activate the relaxation response in the parasympathetic system. So that breath, I did not know before I was a coach. I really didn't get the breath thing, but our modern stressors need us to stay in a calmer state of mind so that our high functioning brain is not hijacked by the fight or flight to go to the cave brain running away from danger. So with that, I just want to end with a quote. It has been a long haul these last couple of years, a lot of extra stress on top of stress, the stress icing on the stress cake, as I like to say. So the one silver lining that we have, the gift of the suffering, I think we're going to see is we've had an opportunity to find deeper powers within ourselves. And when life's most challenging. So this quote by Joseph Campbell really speaks to me. And I think that all of you can feel and give yourself permission to dig deeper and take care of yourself better with your well-being. The awakening of consciousness is very important right now. And I think we know that well-being matters. So you are in good company with everyone trying to do that as well. And I'll stop sharing and open it up for discussion. And I think, either in the chat or maybe if someone wants to unmute or raise their hand and then unmute. Any thoughts? I have some other topics too. So to get you thinking, some coaching tips. Okay. We know that we talked about boundaries, right? So that was one of the stressors that came from the survey. Resentment is a red flag. So just want to reiterate that if you're feeling resentful about something, maybe you're people pleasing too much. And maybe it's a resentful yes. People are asking you to do things. There are things that you have to do for work and there are things you have to do for home. But let's just say maybe then there's the community, the church, voluntary actions, and lots of people are asking you because you're so good and competent and talented. So a resentful yes is one that you say yes and you feel good because you've been asked and you feel good that you made that person happy. When it gets closer and closer to whatever that activity was, a resentful yes is like, why doesn't anyone else do this? Why am I doing this? I don't have time to do this. I don't have energy to do this. So we want authentic yeses. And no, as the author Anne Lamott says, no is a complete sentence. So give yourself permission to say no sometimes. That is an actual coaching exercise. So even if it's uncomfortable for you, think where you can say no, and maybe sometimes say no if you think that's going to be a resentful yes later. That's a good coaching technique. Any other thoughts? Because I've got more coaching tips for you too. So if you're all just taking this in and not sure, oh
I
yes,
was just
Lori?
going to throw out, yeah, just even like having this conversation, I almost feel like because of the stress we've all been in for the last few years, we've kind of just been hanging tough and tight. I tend to refer to myself sort of as concrete, sort of when I get in that mode, I just don't let anything in. And just acknowledging that it's okay to do this. Like, I almost feel like some sadness, like the emotions starting to come out. It's like just acknowledging that it's okay, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be exhausted from 2 years, 2.5 years, whatever it is we've kind of been going through. And to empower or motivate myself now to kind of reshift, refocus, look at those wheels and kind of, where I'm at. I don't, that's just, I'm sort of having a reaction here,
Yeah.
and I literally feel like it's sort of from just kind of, running with concrete in me, just not allowing fear and all that stress to get in, even though it was in there. And just giving myself permission now to like let some of that go, and take care of myself for a little bit,
Lori, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that, because if you are feeling emotional after talking about this and just the image you gave us so much like that concreteness, we plow through crisis. We're very good at that as you are as caregivers and as human beings, plow through a crisis, but that can't go on forever. Right? You're going to need to know how to and when to not be concrete. And it's okay to have that emotional release. And it's okay to take that break and say there's a day that it's so bad and it's so emotional that you're just like sobbing or just like having a day you just can't even mentally function. That's okay. See, the brain sometimes will make a big deal about that. Like, oh no, like this is the beginning of the end. It's probably a wave that will crash through you. And on the other side, you'll be much stronger and feel emptied out. So a lot of what we do in coaching is that emptying out. Someone is able to talk to even just what I see as a coach, sometimes even putting words to it to an unbiased third party. Being able to talk it out feels good. There's a debrief that should happen now. And that, you've had a lot of grief too. There's been a lot of loss of life, but also loss of things. And our energy source of maybe not being around people we love and traveling. So thank you, Lori, for really putting that human face on it. We had another, let's see, looking in the chat. It's no is okay. So Tina, I'm glad for the permission, right? To give yourself permission. You can be human. And it can be a no for now. We are human beings, not human doings. Yeah, Mary, thank you for the verge of tears, right? It's that this is one of the things I see a lot is like, and then people always apologize and they want to pull. I will say that I see a lot of this, like really pull that tear before it even drops off of their eye. And I say, it's okay. This is a good release. It's a good release. Sometimes in meditation, people might cry, or in a yoga class, someone might cry. We're releasing a lot of the emotions. We're emotional beings for a reason. So we can only stuff for so long. We don't want to blow up and be a volcano. So it's okay to release some of those emotions. I think too, I feel like paperwork came up as a big, I realize that that's very difficult. I have to say it's a particular difficulty for me. Luckily, my field doesn't have a lot of paperwork because I'm really bad at it. Like I'm bad about it in my personal life too. And one of the thoughts I had about that is, beware of the inner rebel or the inner critic around the parts of a job that are cumbersome. We can spend a lot of energy in resistance rather than understanding we're having all these thoughts about how much we hate something. And then, like, for me, the inner rebel comes, I start procrastinating. I don't want to do it. I don't want to fill out those forms. And I realize that that's probably a cumbersome, stressful, necessary part. So you can have compassion for yourself, you know, that it may not be the best part of your job. That's not why you went into it, but then watch out for the ways your thoughts around it or procrastination waste your own energy. You know, it's hard because it's not something that can just go away, but I'm sure that it's less the likable part of the job for most people. And takes up time. So time management is huge. Time management in many ways, though, is self-management. So I hope that a lot of what I talked about in the presentation gives you the courage to maybe look a little more critically at the things you say yes to or no to, or the time that you have. A to-do list is easy to make. You know, you can fill in 20 lines. How much time is that really going to take you? How are you giving yourself buffer time? Sometimes people are, you know, so in tune with, you know, making sure they're so effective that they're always late. Like if you're traveling somewhere, they're always late because you're cramming one more thing in all the time. And so do watch out for that, because that's actually adding a layer of stress based on productivity, and a good thing that might be a negative thing in your life. Oh, Lori, that's great to just sort of put that out to everybody, right? If anyone would like to set a time to be mindful together, set a path for self-care. In community, you can help each other stay accountable to doing that, because you're going to go back to your old routines. The brain goes back to what's familiar, not what's comfortable. So the brain will be back right in the routine. So I think that it's great if you can, you know, buddy up and be accountable to staying on a path to take care of yourself. Oh, Kara, thank you for sharing that. Just a beautiful thing, right? We have these moments where we're grabbing at comforts like drinking and food, and it might not be serving us. It might be making us more tired. It's a short-term fix, and how much we can make a difference with some of those behaviors. And it's not easy at first to change those patterns. So thank you for sharing that. And Danielle, thank you for that. With, you know, definitely effective to buddy up and help each other to take care of yourselves. I'm trying to think if there is more. Okay. Oh, you joined a group. That's beautiful. And, you know, there is nothing more powerful, Kara, than a group of women supporting you. I think that's amazing. That is amazing. Silver Sis, that's awesome. Good for you. Good for you. And two, again, a point on mindfulness is, if I were to pare that way back and give you a coaching thought that was really easy to remember, you're more okay than not okay. And in mindfulness, as long as you are breathing, you are more okay than not okay. And there are moments you're going to need to pull that statement out when things feel out of control, you're completely depleted, that cloud is clouding the sun, and you have no energy left and nothing to give, or things are all crashing down on you. I also have, you know, bereavement and resilience coaching is a specialty area for me. So I have seen it all. I have experienced it in my own life when you have like the perfect storm of events crashing down on you. But really, as long as you are breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you. And it's just a matter of getting through, and then to pull it back and just find your footing. And we don't often know all the answers at once, right? In real time, like, oh, I have a solution for very difficult things when I'm getting hit in 3 or on 3. Oh, so that's Sammy, beautiful. So far, you have survived 100% of your worst days. Yes, indeed. Good track record that you all have, you know, in the purpose, connecting with your purpose too. On a day everything's falling apart and people are yelling, you know, you probably have people yelling at you sometimes and being very, very cranky and not feeling good. And it even could be your coworkers. And so, you know, connecting with your purpose and the big picture of your life and why you do the work that you do, and not feeling like you have to solve every problem in every minute immediately, because not all problems can be solved immediately. Oh, I thank you so much. What beautiful comments. Any others? And if someone wants to unmute and talk, that's great too. Would love to hear you.
Hey, Kim.
Hi, Deb. Nice
How
to
are you?
see you.
Nice to see you too. I just wanted to let you know that in self-care, which I've been doing a lot of the past 6 months, it's not all about, you know, going and having your nails done or something like that. It can be really, like you said, grabbing onto a group with people that are very similar to you or going through the same struggle that you may be going through. That's been paramount in my last 6 months of my life. And then for me, it was trying to find what is it that I want to be able to help me through this difficult time. And mine was my spirituality and religion. And that's been helping me with the rest of my life. So in those two things, that I've grown so much in, and I have a daughter that's helping me. So we kind of balance each other out, that, you know, when I'm having a bad day, she's my rock. And when she's having a bad day, I'm her rock. And we kind of, you know, that's our balance as far as that goes. And it's knowing that you can't fix issues for somebody else. It's knowing that you have to find the peace in yourself to be able to get through your days in a much more serene type of way. And you can take that wherever you go. You know, you can take that to work. So, you know, I can't fix everybody here. And that's the way I go home every night. And I don't think about work, is because I know I gave them the tools that they needed, support that they may have needed. But in the end, I can't fix that. They have to. So, I just wanted to let you, you know, just to say that I've been working on these things, and it's helped, you know, this wheel. I'm so glad that, you know, religion, spirituality was there. That is so important to some people, and it is for me. And then having the friends don't have to be just these people that you go out and have dinner with. It could be these friends in these groups. And they are the ones that you can hold on to. So
Thank you, Deb. That's
Thank
such a
you.
beautiful thing that you shared. And it's true. And I will say, in coaching, we deal a lot with spirituality. It crosses into life coaching so much, because it's any higher power. People will say, well, I'm not really spiritual, but they might mean not necessarily traditional religion, and then feel like they're unplugged. But there are many ways to plug in. It could be nature. It could be just believing in a higher power, that you're not operating on your own all the time alone. That's too hard. You know, it can be transcending on a much bigger picture to survive extremely difficult things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I found myself, you know, 6 months ago, I was, you know, just succumbed by this situation. And now it's not, you know, although there's ups and downs with this, because we're dealing with a family member with addiction, it is a roller coaster ride. I hate roller coasters in real life, so I don't want to be on this roller coaster. But I can't fix it. I didn't cause it. I can't fix it. But being able to pull yourself back and then grabbing onto people that have had this experience, because not everybody has had that experience. It's one that people don't talk about a lot. And you kind of feel like you're alone in the world. And then when you come out of this and say, oh yeah, by the way, I'm not, it's a very refreshing feeling.
Yes, absolutely. We don't have to have everything on our shoulders all the
Absolutely.
time, right? You didn't, we just, and we can't do things for other people. So
No.
we get to those moments where there's the dilemma and you're in pain, and you also can't survive if you're in pain 24/7, day after day, month after month, year after year.
Yeah.
So good for you to know,
Thank
and
you.
to have your daughter support you too, and,
Yeah.
and balancing and having a supportive women around you, supportive. That's great. Thank you for your courage and sharing all that.
Oh, thank you.
You're making us cry. But that's so good to kind of an emotional release. Like, we're all okay. And I think that's going to save the day for all of us. There's an expression called equanimity. And I feel like I want to make sure it's a word, and it's a perfect place to end because I don't want to keep anyone past time. I just looked, it's 11:30. Equanimity is being able to hold joy and pain in the same life. That suffering in the ways that we suffer as human beings is not failing. It's a normal part of life. So equanimity is the grace with which we can hold that both in the life, and not make us not have a joyful life, or not feel like the pain and suffering is our failure. And so I wish you all equanimity and in all that you do, and to know that you are magnificent human beings. And I hope this empowers you, and maybe I'll see you again. I hope so. Thank you all for your beautiful comments and for sharing with each other. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Kim, and thank you guys all for being here today. It's been really, it's been a wonderful session, and hopefully you'll give us some feedback in those evals so we can do some more of this. That's helpful to you. We want to make sure it serves your needs. So thank you all for what you do in our community, and celebrate taking care of yourselves intentionally. I like that. Has to be intentional. Thank you all very much.